Right, I'm here with Harold Jarche at an event in London about London as a network city, drawing on Harold's expertise in network leadership, in learning online, and drawing some linkages between understanding what happens in the business world and what also works in civil society. And you gave us a really powerful model, Harold, of different levels of operation that you might like to recap for us.
Well, I think the model, which I call the triple operating system, is that it doesn't matter whether you are in a private organization or public or the social sector, is that we really work in three types of networks. The first is that we have these networks in which we get work done. So that would be an action network. We also participate in many different ways in awareness networks or social networks where we get new ideas, we connect with people, we have loose social ties with them. And then what connects those together are what I call alignment networks or communities of practice. And most of us are working in all three of those at any given time. And I think that one of the barriers to knowledge flow between these three networks quite often is at the institutional level. So in an organization or in a network is that how can you lower the barriers so that knowledge can flow and connections can be made. Because we know that having more connections, better connections, more diverse connections actually helps knowledge flow. And we know that as we deal with more and more complex problems is that we don't have the answers ourselves. So that we have to use our networks, engage with our networks in order to take action. But we can't do that unless we first create the trusted relationships, and those take time and effort.
And we quite often hear people say, I really wish that people would collaborate more. And that's particularly tough, I think, in civil society settings where people are competing for grants and wary of sharing their knowledge. But I think you emphasized more strongly the importance of cooperation and being prepared to give stuff out without necessarily seeking an immediate reward is absolutely fundamental in building networks.
Yes, I think, you see, cooperation was something actually that comes from very much a bygone era. So that when we lived in tribes, quite often is that we cooperated because we had to. We had common pasture ground, and everyone sort of worked for the betterment of the tribe, and that was cooperation at a small scale. We then moved into creating institutions. First the church, the army, and then other institutions that we've created over the years. And their collaboration was the way in which we got work done. And usually that was because of someone who had some type of hierarchical power was able to coordinate that. It's how we built the cathedrals. It's how we get a lot of work done now. And then within markets, we have the same, we have collaboration where organizations collaborate within and sometimes with partners, but they're competitive, and it's you dominate through your competitiveness. As we move into the network era, one of the things that we know about networks is that the way in which we can exert influence in a network is through our reputation. And the only way in which we can improve our reputation within a network is by giving to the network. So the more that we give to the network, the more the network recognizes us and we have a better reputation. And that is through cooperation. So I differentiate between cooperation and collaboration. In terms of collaboration is working together to get something done, usually with a mission and an objective. And quite often that objective is external. It comes from the boss or it comes from the organization. Cooperation, on the other hand, is where I am giving freely with no expectation of reciprocity, no quid pro quo. And we see that a lot on the internet, whether it's bloggers sharing their knowledge or someone sharing something on YouTube. I use YouTube a lot to do my bicycle maintenance. I find a video of someone showing me how to change a derailleur or something like that. The person who put that on there is not getting anything out of it. They're doing it because they love what it is that they're doing. However, over time, that person could get a higher reputation. It could wind up actually getting better sponsorship, or could even wind up getting some type of a paid employment because they're known as the best bicycle repair person online. So giving in that way improves the network, and in the long run helps the individual.
And you didn't talk too much about particular technology platforms being better or not or whatever, because I think you're implying that we have to become capable of working across a number of different platforms and obviously face-to-face as well. But you did talk quite a bit about the people, the roles that are important to make things work in these different areas.
Yes, I think that really the focus on the human aspect is much more important than the technology aspect. So that, first of all, is that I think everybody has to be able to understand what networks are, and has to be cognizant of what is my network, what are my connections, do I have diversity within that? And then if one wishes to strengthen different types of networks, particularly if you are a civil society type of organization, is that there are different roles that can be played, such as weaving, in terms of strengthening the network by connecting people together. And because the more what I call or triangles there are, so that one person, I know a person, I know another person, but those two don't know each other, I put them together, and they're no longer have to rely on me to enable the knowledge to flow. So the more triangles within a network model, then the faster information can flow, the faster people can share knowledge. And then there's also roles such as facilitating, and I think that cities offer a wonderful venue for that in terms of providing space for people to get together. Actually, the space that we're in right now is pretty well a facilitated space, which I've noticed a number of different organizations, from ourselves to the NHS and other organizations who are here, and providing that space for us to get together and have this. And so they're facilitating the physical get-together, some of the meetups that are done as well. And then finally, within organizations themselves, is that how can they develop people to become these weavers and these facilitators, because it takes time, it takes practice, like being a good community manager. Being a community manager takes a certain level of skill, and quite often a community is really determined by the skills of that community manager and how much they're involved, and they're making sure that people who aren't active get involved and people feel like they are part of a community. So those are the three main roles that I see.
So, drawing on that analysis, the challenge we have here, or the opportunity we have here in London, is that there is some rethinking of the structures of civil society, led by London funders and two umbrella organisations here. So I think there's an appetite for exploring what this means in practice in London. The difficulty, of course, is to help existing organisations and funders understand this new evolving world. Where do you think we should invest our effort? I guess it's not in we're going to create a new technology platform here. Is it about a community of practice of the sort of people that we have here today?
I think there's a couple of areas. One is at the individual skill level, is that people have to become comfortable with the tools and with the practices. We've trained people to hoard their knowledge over the years, and particularly, of my age, or, sort of anyone over 40 who's gone through a school system in which you're competing, you're getting grades, you're competing with other people at work, and getting people to shift that mindset takes time and effort. It's like learning a new language. So, and to learn a new language, one must first get comfortable with it. And unfortunately, when you first learn it, you feel like you're a 6-year-old all over again, and it's a little bit embarrassing. So getting competent with the tools and with the whole notion of engaging with networks, I think, is the first part. The other part, I think, is at the organizational level, is removing barriers, is removing barriers to people who want to engage outside the organization. And that can be a technological issue, or is also just policies and procedures. Type of issue. And then finally, I think that we don't need large programs. We don't need some type of big design to shift the entire city of London going in a certain direction. We need to engage this complex network with a number of small projects. That's what a friend of mine here, actually in the UK, Ewan Semple, and he talks about Trojan mice. Is that we don't need to build a Trojan horse and put it out there to get change going. Is we need to implement a number of small Trojan mice and see how those little projects go, those little change initiatives, and if they work well, we reinforce them, and if we don't, then we haven't invested a lot in that. So.